Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. Video is going to be a little bit late this week. Had a lot going on this week, and I wish I could say it was because of great fall fishing or archery hunting for whitetail here in Illinois, but those things haven't taken up much of my time. In fact, it appears as though we have an episodic hemorrhagic outbreak in Illinois, and some of my friends have found so many dead deer on their hunting areas that they're probably not even going to hunt this year for whitetail deer. But I wanted to get this video out. It's going to be a little bit late, and I want to talk about really one of the last topics to do with rifle optics. Probably the least used, the rarest that we see people make use of in the United States today, and that is nighttime optics. We'll do a little history here, and then I'll tell you about the kind of current state of the art that's out there, what you can do with these, and I think we're going to see this field grow almost explosively in the next few years for several reasons. There's more ways we can use this kind of technology in low light situations, and the prices are coming down. Quality's going up, prices are coming down. In like a lot of other fields of technology, we're just going to see more and more of this stuff out there. Talking about night optics, they fall into two general categories: light magnification, what we would call starlight, or in many cases night vision, and infrared. And infrared has evolved into kind of two distinct areas as well. The first military use of night vision was in early World War II. 1939, the Germans had some infrared optics and infrared searchlights mounted on some of their tanks. So they could project that infrared light source, which is not visible to the human eye, and it reflected back into their IR optics, and it gave them the ability to see in total darkness. The first U.S. use of this was also in some tanks, but probably the best known was the M1 infrared system developed for the M1 carbines towards the end of World War II. This was large, heavy, fragile. It was of limited usefulness, but the power of this ability to see at nighttime really came through. It was mounted on M1 carbines because it simply did not have the kind of reach you needed to use with longer range weapons like bolt action 30-06s or the M1 Garand in World War II. However, it was used very effectively during the campaign on Okinawa towards the end of World War II. One of the major problems they had there with the United States Marines was the Japanese were very good at very slowly, silently infiltrating in towards the front lines of the Marines at night. And when they started getting these and using these M1 carbines mounted with this infrared system, and this was just like I described for the German tanks, it projected infrared light from a rather large searchlight, big heavy battery required to power it. Then that infrared light was reflected back into the scope that would only see in the infrared spectrum. It was estimated that about 30% of the nighttime casualties we inflicted on Japanese troops trying to sneak in came from those M1 infrared equipped devices. So we very quickly saw the power of it. That's an active system. You have to actively send out infrared light source. You reflect it back into your optics. That means anyone else out there who has those infrared scopes can see that light being projected as well. So if the enemy has the same level of technology, all they do is leave their searchlight off, scan the area, and if the enemy is using any active IR light sources, they're going to know immediately. So they can be passive in the way they view before they turn on their system. Not the best. The next evolution in this, the next generation of night optics, was starlight scopes. Or if you've seen them in movies or books or things, it's the AN-PVS-2 starlight scope. Rather large, big scope, mounted on an M16 generally. And what this did was amplify what light was available out there. starlight scope. The light from the stars, especially if there was a partial or a full moon, you had lots of light. It would amplify that up to supposedly about 50,000 times, and projected that onto a little screen inside the scope. So you're looking basically at a little, not black and white, but green and white TV image inside there. And those first starlight scopes had limited range. They had rather crude resolution, but they were still pretty powerful things. Now the downside of starlight is you can hide from it. If you're well camouflaged, if you're back in, say, under a tree line, where you are in the shade from the starlight or the moonlight that's falling down on the earth, then back in that shade, the starlight scope has very limited ability to magnify enough to pull you out of that darkness. An advantage is those starlight scopes see into that infrared light spectrum. So you could project infrared light out and light up those shadows. But there again, you're going active and the enemy can see that light source. Now, starlight technology has gone through several generations. They're into at least the 5th generation that I'm aware of. Perhaps there are, better yet stuff out there that the military is making use of. The sensitivity is much greater. The resolution of the image that you see on that little screen in there is far, far better. And it has a little bit better ability to see back into those shaded spots. Now, the special operators in the United States military and law enforcement use these as well. They now have helmet-mounted units which flip down. They call them NODs, night observation devices. Originally, there were 2 tubes, one for each eye. Now there are 2 input tubes for each eye, which gives you a little bit of a stereo kind of vision. Flat vision, flat 2-dimensional vision does not give you a real good perspective, but by adding those 2 intakes on both sides, which are slightly offset from each other, now you can start to gather a little bit of perspective from those. That's starlight. Inexpensive starlight stuff, earlier generation stuff from the Russians has been available in the United States for a number of years. Some folks made use of it, some did not. Some states allow that for nighttime varmint hunting and things of that sort. Some states prohibit the projection of light out for night hunting. So starlight was passive and was legal in a lot of ways. The next evolution in that, really the latest evolution of that, is now thermal. Thermal operates in the same general infrared band, but the original infrared with the passive system where you had to project your light out, that's kind of near infrared. You have to throw the light out and then the sensor in your optics sees that light. Now we have thermal optics that operate in what they call far infrared, which is actually reading the heat signature generated by things out there in the world. On a cool night, human beings, pigs, coyotes, are much warmer than the environment around them, so they stand out very clearly in this thermal kind of scope. You're reading the temperature variations of what's out there. And the differences in temperature variation can be amazingly tiny. Several years ago, a company sent me an IR, a thermal sensor that just clipped on the end of my smartphone. Plug it in the Android, fire up the app, and you're seeing an image of infrared. I was working at the State Police Academy at the time, so I'm walking around the halls in the daytime. I'm playing with this, and you can clearly see people are much warmer than their surroundings at room temperature, and you can get several palettes. You can switch it between the hot things are white, the hot things are black as opposed to a light background. There are various color palettes that you can pick out, and I was kind of talking to a couple of guys. I did this for an article for Police Magazine, and talking to a couple of guys in the hallway. Both were one was in uniform, one was in plain clothes. The guy in the uniform, you could very clearly tell that he had body armor on, because there was a very major temperature differential between where the body armor was on his body and his arms or his face. And the guy next to him in plain clothes, and I said, "Do you feel okay?" And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because your face appears much warmer than the guy standing next to you." And that little thermal device had an app that you could turn on with a set of crosshairs, and wherever you put the crosshairs, it would actually tell you the temperature, take a temp reading off that surface. And by the temp reading, you know, this guy's like 2 degrees warmer than you, and he goes, "No, I feel kind of lousy today. I got a cold going on," or something like that. And you could literally tell from his forehead that his skin temperature was warmer. And in fact, that kind of technology was used by airports during COVID to screen to see if people coming through had a temperature. So the technology is amazing. The early thermal kind of stuff, the FLIR units that were on helicopters, they had to have a supercooling unit in there to differentiate between the images coming into them. But that technology has now been reduced to this sort of operation. Once again, I'm going to talk about AGM scopes. That's what I have. And I really followed up on research from a buddy who wanted to get into thermal. And he did a lot of research and ended up with AGM. His is more like a box that sits here with an eyepiece, where a newer generation of the technology looks more like a rifle scope. And it just looks like a rifle scope. It has, you know, internal thermal technology in the front. It has that little TV screen in here that I'm viewing from the rear, and things like that. But the thermal stuff that's out there now really kind of fits into 2 categories. There's a sort of a consumer grade stuff, and the AGM, I think, is probably one of the better values at that end of the price spectrum. At the other end are things like Trijicon, or even beyond, military grade stuff. But you're talking the difference between $2,500 for a night optic and maybe $12,000 to $15,000 or more. And what they will offer you is more sensitivity and primarily a much finer resolution of image and a much finer resolution of the temperature gradations between what you're seeing out there in that thermal stuff. And in the limited use that I have had with this, with active infrared light, this will also see into that infrared spectrum like Starlight does. So if you want to project an IR light source, mount an IR flashlight up here and throw light out, you can enhance the ability of what's going on out there. But while you might be able to hide from Starlight by getting into a shadow area or by camouflaging yourself very, very well, you almost can't hide from thermal. It's going to see that temperature difference between you and your surrounding environment, and it's spooky. On some nighttime coyote calling trips I've had, you can spot those coyotes out there at a couple hundred yards or more, even with some of this more basic technology. And it's strange, you know, you'll watch a coyote come in, maybe you'll lose sight of him into a ditch, and occasionally I see a little flicker of white light along the edges of say a picked cornfield. And if you kind of swing around and concentrate on it, that's a mouse over there. That's a mouse hopping along the edge of that field. And they are startlingly different from the background. They're, you know, black on, if you get the black palette up or the white palette up, or colors, you can really very distinctly see those little small objects. And this is a 384 resolution. The 640 resolution is the best, I think, that the AGM and some of the more consumer end optics have nowadays. There are some military grade stuff that goes up to 1280, maybe even better. Even at the 384, you can make out those fine details out to 100 yards or more. So the technology has reached the point where it is very, very usable. Now, you can get these as standalone optics. This rifle I have, you know, on the Picatinny rail, I have quick detach. I can put a red dot. I can put a 1:6 designated marksman type scope. I can go to this night vision. For a number of years, both Starlight technology and the thermal technology can also be had in an even smaller unit as a clip-on. which you can clip on to the front of a regular daytime optic scope. And so what that scope is actually doing then is looking in and seeing that little TV screen of the thermal or the starlight image. And I've used those. The Simrads was one of the earliest, high-end stuff. And on the M24 Army Sniper system, they had a straight 10 power loophole scope. And I've done a number of training exercises with the Simrad mounted on there. Was not a super high resolution optic, but it worked very effectively out to, I'd say, 300 yards. We were doing pretty well. You had an aiming shift. You had to kind of recalibrate your crosshairs when it went from daytime optics to the night vision, but it was predictable, and you just knew how much to dial in, and you were back on target. And we did some pretty good training use with those things. One advantage of these is that they have their own electronically generated reticle, and in different shapes and often in different colors. I think this particular unit I think it has at least 18 different reticles you can call up. So that means I can zero different loads for this 5.56 rifle. Okay, I can put a 62 grain TSX hunting grade bullet for nighttime use on pig hunting. I can use the 52 grain hollow point load for varmint hunting on coyotes. You can use it in self-defense or point defense weapons as well. So I could have multiple loads zeroed for this rifle just by switching between reticles. I can switch this over to an AR-10 rifle, 7.62 by 51, get the power of that 30 caliber round, switch to another reticle, and I'm zeroed for that load there. I chose the scope looking one over the kind of the box with the eyepiece, because if I chose to ever mount this on a bolt action rifle with a Picatinny rail, it just seemed like it was going to be a lot more natural to use with your eye than that kind of boxy thing. You'd have to mount that thing so far back. It was kind of awkward. But it's what you like. The battery life on these things can go 6 to 8 hours pretty well. This one has a couple of internal batteries, plus a 1, 2, 3 battery that you can drop in as a kind of a add-on backup. Some of them run strictly on external batteries that you feed in as you need. And the price range, this one was around $2,500 last year when I got it. And you can get considerably lower priced ones. Cabela's in particular carries another brand that is substantially less money, but in our research, my buddy and I researched, that brand had a pretty lousy reputation for failure. And a lot of those had to go back for repairs, where this AGM seemed to have a pretty good reputation. And as I said, I'm not backed by them, I'm not promoting them at all. There are a number of brands out there. Like most optics, you're going to get what you pay for. The more you're willing to pay, the better optics you're going to get, the more rugged system you're going to get, probably the longer battery life you're going to get. So, buy what you can afford. I will say in the uses that I've had for this, I've used it here in Illinois, I've used it hunting out in Wyoming a couple of times. I've got it mounted on a tripod now because to stare through that scope, to use it not only for aiming, but for viewing, is not really comfortable. And of course at nighttime, you don't have to be as well concealed against the game that you're dealing with out there. So I've found that the tripod was a really good way to do it. If I'm sitting, if I'm standing, I'm going to set up the height for what I need. I can rotate through and I can scan around with it. However, that scanning process with a rifle is not all that comfortable either. And so my next purchase is going to be a handheld viewer so that I can set this up ready to go. I'm going to do my viewing, my target acquisition with that handheld viewer. And then when I've got something to concentrate in on, then I'm going to switch over to the rifle scope and be ready to engage a target as needed. The guys that are doing a lot of pig hunting down south, a lot of them you're seeing, they're wearing helmets. They've got flip down nods, just like the military uses. That's even more comfortable for long-term vision and scanning. But some of those guys are using pretty high-end rifle optics and pretty high-end nods on their helmets, and they could invest $15,000 or $20,000 just in their night vision optics. I'm not ready to do that yet, and I just don't see the point for what I'm going to use that for, and as you folks as well. You can find tons of information about this equipment on YouTube, and some of the cooler images are watching those night hunts for feral pigs down south, where there may be 2 or 3 guys lined up ready to go, and they'll do a countdown so everybody gets one good clean shot to start with, and then after that it's running shots. And it looks to me like the only thing that would be more fun is shooting hogs out of helicopters. So buddy from Wyoming and I intend to spend a month or 2 down south this winter, in our fifth wheels, and we're going to be looking around for places to do some night hunting on hogs, and we're going to try to get some of that going on pretty well. One other thing about it, since these are not optical devices that you're actually viewing completely through, they're electronic devices. Virtually all of them, you hit one more button and you're recording, so you can record the image of what this equipment is seeing, and you've got your own footage for watching the pigs go down. Okay, that's hunting. Does this kind of technology have a value for self-defense? I think it's rather limited. I think it's going to have to be kind of point defense. It's going to be a stationary place. But if you are defending a home, if we are in a prepper situation, we are less than 2 weeks from an election here now. And I have predicted in the past, and I will continue to predict, that I think the most dangerous time we're going to face is if Trump wins. Because if we think there is a Trump derangement syndrome in effect now, wait till he gets a second term. They're going to go crazy. There are a number of videos out there about a recent document produced by the U.S. military authorizing the military to use deadly force in the assistance with civilian law enforcement in the event of, they don't really say specifically, but I think it is almost a waiver of the Posse Comitatus Act. Lawyers will have to sort that out, but if it is, they're essentially authorizing regular military troops, not National Guard, but active duty military troops, to be prepared to put down whatever someone decides needs to be put down. And we know between November and January, if Trump gets elected, it remains to be seen just how far they're willing to go to try to stop him from going into office. So I have to admit, that's one of the things that was in the back of my mind when I made the investment in this last year. Night hunting, number one, probably 95% of what I thought I would ever do with it. But if we get to the point where we have to fight amongst ourselves in this country, adding this capability to what you can do at night is tremendous. Look around. These things they're not super common, but there are IR devices out there you can get that can really enhance your ability to use these. And I use these in law enforcement, not in conjunction with a rifle, but when we were doing night surveillance on drug operations and that thing. We had some night vision. It was not the most capable, but it would do. And we had the ability to do a little bit of rather coarse photography through it to document what was going on out there. And there are some devices, the military uses a lot of chemical sticks, Sialume sticks. You break them, you shake them up, they give off light. Well, you can get those in infrared form. They only give off a non-visible infrared light. So you can mark things, or you can light up certain areas inside of a room or something like that with those IR light sources that are not readily apparent unless you have some kind of passive starlight or thermal or infrared viewing system. One of the interesting little things we had, and I looked online last night, and they're still available in some form. It was a little device that clipped on the top of a 9-volt battery. And if we had a confidential informant out making a drug buy or something like that, a lot of times we would clip this little, and it just has little LED bumps on the top of it, but they only give off light in the infrared spectrum. And you could set them to be solid on or flashing, or there were a couple variations. But on a couple of events, we would put our guy, our confidential informant out there who's making a buy, we would kind of duct tape one of those up under the top of his ball cap. So when we're watching through the starlight scope, you know, this one guy's head is going doot, 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 with a really bright infrared flash on it. And so we knew exactly who our guy was. They make these now that are kind of Velcro backed. You can turn them on and slap them under a shirt or something like that. They're not readily visible at all, but that infrared will show through. So with light sticks or these battery powered IR sources, there's ways you can be pretty creative and set up some pretty powerful events, either ambushes or contact with an unknown group. And you can have someone observing that with a good rifle and a thermal scope, and you know exactly who the good guys are if things go bad for you. So it's a short video. I just wanted to kind of go over this last of the optical rifle technologies, the ability to see at night. It's not for everyone price-wise. It's not for everyone in terms of what you need to do. But it's really cool technology. And I suggest you spend some time on YouTube, see what's out there. If you've got friends that have got this stuff, go out and play with it. And once you get the hang of it, it can be really, really powerful stuff and allow you to operate in virtually in total darkness. So that's the video this week. This will kind of wrap up my overview of rifle optics. If anybody has questions, put them in comments. If anybody has other topics that you would like me to cover, I'm going to be setting up what I'm going to be doing over the next few months, so by all means, if there's something you'd like to see on different cartridges, different weapons. One thing I think I want to do is, I've always been a lover of side-by-side shotguns, and that's growing. There's more and more modern-made side-by-sides out there all the time. It seems like that FUD technology is making a comeback. And I'll show you some of the ones that I've acquired over the years for bird hunting. I fudded myself and went back a generation or two and picked up some 80-year-old or more refurbished Ithaca side-by-side doubles. And so I think I'll do a video on that. But if there's other topics you'd like to hear, by all means let me know. Folks, I encourage you to get out there and vote. Less than 2 weeks, my wife and I actually went and voted early for the first times in our lives. And the reason we did that is because in the last election cycle 2 years ago in Illinois, there were countless situations where people went in on election day, and in Illinois you do not have to show any ID to vote. What you have to do is sign a voting application, and they will compare your signature to the one you gave them when you registered. And if it's anywhere close, they're not going to question you in the first place. But 2 years ago in Illinois, a number of people went in on election day to vote, and when they got there, they were told, sorry, you can't vote because you already voted early. No, they hadn't. But someone else had gone in and voted early using their name. So if you believe the Wikipedia and YouTube bullshit that there is no voter fraud in this country, then you're a fool. There is an enormous amount of voter fraud out there, and our candidate has to win by enough, large enough, to overcome that. Folks, this is the most important election we've probably ever faced. Get out and vote. Thank you for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. If you like what I'm doing here, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, resubscribe, whatever you need. Cool technology. Be safe out there. Thank you for watching.
Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl. Last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah. That's all there is till next time.